Hello, welcome everyone. I am Tiabu. It is about 2 p.m. and I'm exhausted again. You know how yesterday, if you saw the video, I said something about how I was really tired and getting burned out and I needed to start getting back on track? Yeah, I didn't do that very effectively at all. Instead, what happened is I got really invested into editing and getting out the new content on the new channel, specifically the podcast content, and I immediately realized, oh shit, one of the fundamental things that I know about YouTube is that you've got to start trying to figure out the ways that you want to brand and figure out branding that works properly. And like, by works properly, I don't mean gets people to click on videos. I mean expresses effectively what's in the content of the video in a way that people can understand, so that the people who do click on the videos are the kinds of people that you want to click on the video. Now, obviously, I want to reach as many people as possible, so minimal filtering is necessary. But I want the thumbnail to have a style to it and a format, and it's got to be related to me. And then I realized, like, oh, I should probably put some symbology or like some symbols around myself. And I had done a couple of symbols for TEET. This is this one, and I'll just put a digital version of this because I have it saved perfectly. Ta-da! I do all of my symbols, including the old original Tiabu on the green with the spotlight on it and all that stuff. I do all of that on paper first. That's how I do my symbology stuff, because I guess I've never really thought about why I do it that way. But if I had to guess, it's because my initial training in art and stuff comes from drafting and using paper and pencil a lot. I have a drawing tablet and I've packed it up and put it away because it's not a super expensive one. Otherwise, I would just give it away. But I want to keep it around because it's still useful sometimes to have a drawing tablet, but mostly paper and pen and pencil does something to me. But I did a couple of iterations of this. So this was the simplest one. It's TEE, and it's the idea that I'm the thing that drills down between the lines and figures out what's in between all these conflicts. And I styled it red and blue because I'm starting to aim in a more socio-political direction. And, well, we often designate our color scheme and our dichotomies as red and blue. I could have easily gone toward like pink and green as well, I think is a really solid one. And that's something that I would just steal whole cloth from Amaishi in Promare, because that is red and blue versus pink and green as two options, as two ways of being. And that's kind of cool. But red and blue seemed to work at that moment, and I drew it out and I liked the symbol. But there were some problems with the symbol. It's not square, for one thing. And I don't necessarily know that I want it to be, because I want it to be a golden ratio rectangle more than I want it to be square. But all of the places where you put symbols are either little circles or little squares on the internet. The windows that you get to show your art through, or your logo or your symbol through, which is a representation of self, is a square logo. And so in the interest of fitting into the system the way that it actually is, I started trying to develop a more square format. So I went to drawing out Fibonacci trees in different ways. And then I began connecting them in different ways and sketching through what I had done with graphite, which is my preferred medium anyway. And I started to find this double helical structure that sort of looks like a drill and looks like a screw and feels like it's driving down into something. And it's also kind of a sword, if you want to imagine it that way. And there's patterning to it. And I started, as I came to this idea, I started to notice that as I was creating the line work of the graphite, it created a real visual texture to the whole thing. And so I wanted to go off of that and build it into something else. And eventually, what I ended up doing for this took multiple iterations, and a couple that I haven't shown you, and a couple that I've just thrown away and crumbled up because they weren't good, or I made an unfixable mistake. But it turned into this, and this is TEE. And this is just an iteration too, but this is as good as I've got it so far. That's the T that is me, that drives down and drills down into the structures of reality. And what's so crazy is as I started accomplishing the mathematics of this and figuring out where I wanted to put the different layers and how to make them intersect and where to place everything, it all started to click into place as something interesting. And it even creates something interesting inside the negative space. It creates like epsilons, like E's in there, or like M's maybe, or something, or these growing spiral shapes. And it's a cool image that sort of draws your eye around itself in a weird way. I'll put up the best picture of it that I've taken. So I took the best picture of it that I could with the best lighting that I could. I don't have pro photography stuff, so wasn't able to do that. And also, it turns out that graphite is really, really hard to photograph effectively because it's shiny. You can see that it's reflective here in the camera, right? It's shiny, and so getting a good picture with good lighting on it is like really hard. And then I went in and I did the important other stuff, which is using the skills that I've acquired in GIMP, GNU Image Manipulation Program, which is a free open source image manipulation program that I think anyone who thinks that they should be, like, oh, I could totally do Photoshop, that would be really cool, go download GIMP. It's free. And it's not Photoshop by any stretch of the imagination, but you can do a lot with it. And for basic stuff and as like an in-between between MS Paint and Photoshop, GIMP is learnable and also very powerful. And you can do a lot of plugins and get a lot of outsourced things and brushes and all sorts of stuff and make GIMP a very powerful tool set for yourself that's completely free as opposed to something like Photoshop, which, as far as I remember, Adobe's doing the Creative Suite licensing, which I think is, it works. It's okay, but I'll also mention Inkscape is a program that I've used before, and I may go in and try to develop this logo in Inkscape because Inkscape is an SVG creator, and SVGs are vector graphics, and they're super useful for logos because you can scale them to any size, essentially. That's quite useful, but I might have to do a simplified version of this because this is the hand-done version, right? Or at least one iteration of it, and the actual texture of the hand-doneness of it really matters, I think. And it especially matters in a world that's moving hell-bent toward AI art. So that's where I guess we'll start is I'll say somebody in my Discord sent out to everyone an incredible video that I would highly recommend going and watching. And let me go and find the exact video and take a screenshot of it so that I can recommend it to you directly and you don't get confused at all. Video is called The End of Art, an Argument Against Image AIs, and it's by Steven Zapata Art. And I'd never heard of this individual, but somebody posted it in my Discord essentially saying like, hey, everybody should watch this. This is pretty interesting. And I've been following the AI art thing and been a little bit weirded out by it, partly because a few days ago, I was talking with a friend outside, and I was like, gosh, I really need a sketchbook. I need a sketchbook. Wait, I could just download an app. So I went and I looked, and I said, draw. I just typed draw into Google Play, and 4 or 5 of the top 10 results were AI image creation, AI draw, AI artist, create whatever you want. And I went, whoa, that's not what I want. I want a sketchbook so that I can create art because I want to write down my ideas. I don't want an AI to generate them for me. Now, maybe I could have an AI generate them for me, and that might be interesting. In fact, that might be a thing to do, is to go and have an AI generate a couple of logos for T Talks Too Much or T&D or T-A-Boo and see what the AI comes up with. Because I've shown you now some of the ideas that I've come up with. These are some of the ideas that I've come up with. T and the drill, and I extended this out for some reason, so it's not pristine anymore, but I'll show you the digital version, or this with the T. And then I don't know where the TTTM logo is. I had one that was like that, but I'll post that here. So that's T, 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 and then the 3 T's form an M. And one of the T's is looking to the right, and the right is only the red is only looking toward the right, and the left is only looking toward the blue is only looking toward the left, and then the T is both, and it's in the middle, and it's holding them together. And that's like, wow, that's the idea that I want to do, because it's something interesting about drills and screws is that they don't just drill down and separate, they hold things together, and they become a part of all of the things, and they hold things together. And so maybe that's something that I want to evoke in my next iterations on this logo. But that's something that I wanted to talk about was design and logos and symbols. As I'm reading Young, Man and His Symbols, I'm thinking a lot about symbols and what they mean, and like, it seems to me that if you get the right symbol for something, it can just create change in the world by producing the proper symbol. That's weird. It's weird. I don't understand it. But I mean, logo design for a company or for an app or for especially on the internet, it indicates so very much about what the thing is and what the thing does. You know, the Amazon logo that's a box with the tape on it with the simple arrow that's the smile that's also the thing that links the A to Z in Amazon, and it's like it's all these layered things. But when you see a brown square anywhere, it's Amazon. It just kind of is Amazon. And Discord has its little logo, and I don't even know what that means. It's sort of like a Space Invader thing, and it is what it is. And goodness, and Spotify is the three waves that are waves of sound, but also waves of sharing and waves of connection and creation. And YouTube is the red play button, and that's all that the symbol for YouTube is. And Google is just its own word with different colors in the letters. And it's like, why? Those symbols, some of them at least, are correct. They're correct, and I think that the applications that are attached to them, they win out over the applications that don't win, that don't survive, partly because of the actual underlying nature of the application. But I think a part of that actual underlying nature of the application is generated directly by the symbols that are used by the company to represent themselves. And so there's an important idea there, which is that the symbols and representations and words even that we use to represent ourselves are really important. And I think it's really important to be honest about what you're expressing about yourself, and to not express a self that you are not, and to be, how do I put it, and to be aspirational in the way that you express yourself. To be aspirational and to express yourself in symbols and in words and in art and in all these things as the thing that you want to be, even if you're not there yet. And so there's this balancing act between the honesty portion, which is saying what you are exactly, and the aspiration portion, which is saying what you'd like to be. So one thing for me might be, I struggle with the symbolic representation of myself as anime reactor because it doesn't quite fit. It's not quite what I do. Internet talker person is more like it, but I don't have a word for that. Content creator is correct, but doesn't feel right. Creator is closer because I create a lot of things, and I don't know if all of them are exactly content. But figuring it out and figuring out which labels really fit and which labels I want to fit seems very important. And I would argue and posit that labeling itself is of great utility and of great importance. And we dismiss it at our peril. And I see a lot of people dismissing the process of genreizing or generalizing and putting broad labels on people, or broad labels on film, or broad labels on art, or broad labels on society. And I think the reason for that is because when you boil it down, every piece of art is completely different from every other piece of art. And obviously, to me at least, every human being is completely different from every other human being. And so to say on any level, this person and that person are both this is not entirely true, because they're not both that. They're both that and something else and a bunch of other things, and they're way more complicated than you could understand. So it seems arrogant. But if you're able to look at a few hundred people and extract out some traits about them and use those to differentiate between them in a utilitarian and useful way. For example, to be able to say, I am attracted to people with this set of characteristics, and I am not attracted to people with this set of characteristics. Can't explain why, but if I had a word for the people with this set of characteristics, that would be really useful. So in my case, I'm attracted to people with the characteristics of woman, of female. And I'm not attracted to people with the characteristics generally of male. Generally. And that's pretty interesting. And that was the revelation that I came to when I realized that I'm straight, which is a weird revelation to come to when you're questioning it. It's like, oh wait, it's just pretty simple. And what I discovered is that any of the times where I was on the edge or not quite sure or figuring it out was because I was attracted to the feminine aspects of the people that I was observing or interested in, and was not attracted to the masculine aspects. So having those labels of things, and I'm sorry to break it down to gender, it just seems like the biggest label other than people, because people, big umbrella. And then under that is like gender and maybe age, kids, adolescents, adults, older adults. Those are big broad categories as well, but with flow in between them that's interesting. But the biggest binary, the biggest split is gender, and it's a useful discriminatory thing. It is discrimination. It's seeing things and labeling them, and it's gonna be wrong a lot. And it doesn't account for everybody, because certainly not everybody comes anywhere close to fitting into that binary. Like, there's Klinefelters, it exists. There are other, I hesitate to use the word anomaly, but anomalies are kind of a good thing, since we're a construct of anomalies. We're a construct of millions of years of evolved mutations and anomalous things that have been useful and good. So I got no no implication that those anomalies are bad. And I don't want to include the negative connotation of the word anomaly, but there are people who are different and they don't fit the binary. And so we need more labels, and we need better labels, and we need better systems of labeling. But I feel like throwing out, or attempting to throw out, all labels because they are always wrong is, well, it ignores that, yes, they're always wrong, but they're also almost always to some extent useful, unless they're inherently flawed and like deeply biased and fucking stupid, you know? Anyway, that's sort of neither here nor there. I don't even know how I got here. Yeah, I don't even know how I got here. AI art. The End of Art, an argument against image AIs. Good gosh darn video. And it says something really interesting to me, which is, I went through Steven Zapata Art's channel, and I went through and I looked at all his other videos, and this is by far the most viral video that he's made. It's gone bazonkers. And most of his videos are cool and interesting and really, really awesome, and him experimenting with different kinds of art and stuff. But this is the first time that he's really, really seems to have sat down and passionately and carefully and concisely articulated a well-thought-through, well-researched point. And the process of doing that, of researching and thinking through an important point and making a carefully worded argument and articulating it effectively and communicating effectively, has just taken him from a couple thousand views on most of his videos to 250,000 in the last 3 weeks. While that's just correlation, not causation, I would say that strikes me as interesting, because I've been on this tear about the value of conciseness, and more than the value of conciseness, the value of attempting to communicate effectively. The value of attempting to express yourself, not just in inarticulate art, but in articulate wording as much as possible. And I watched Steven Zapata do it, and you can go watch him do it too. And what he does is pretty stellar and pretty gripping. It's like fascinating. I put the video on last night. My friends and I were out on our patio smoking weed before bed, and I put it out, and I was like, just watch the first couple minutes of this. I think it's really cool. This guy makes an interesting argument. And I put it on, and my two friends who don't care that much about art, don't care that much about AI, don't care that much about anything, were just entranced by a man speaking effectively, because that's what he was doing throughout the video. He's just speaking effectively. Whether you agree with his points or not, his manner of speech is carefully thought through and very effective. And that is admirable and worthy of emulation. And that's really fucking cool. Yeah. Yeah, really cool. Okay, so there's that recommendation. I talked about some of my art and logo design. The reason I talked about the art and logo design is because I ended up until 5 a.m. last night doing that. I just got devolved into scribbling and making things perfect, and then finding and figuring out a way to take a perfect picture of it, and then uploading it or switching it over to my computer and cropping it as perfectly as I can, and even doing some digital manipulation to shift some things around to make some of the lines a little bit more right and more straight and just a little bit better, but not quite, because you don't want to make it too digitally and too perfect. I wanted it to be hand done, and because I did it by hand, and it's good by hand. It's a well done piece of art that I think I'm proud of, and I wanted to capture it as immaculately and perfectly as I could using my limited technology and my phone camera and all that jazz. But that's what I ended up doing. Was staying up until 5 fucking a.m. So that brings us to the next thing, which is I've been talking a lot about doing hard things, doing things when they're hard. And today is a hard day for me. Today's a hard day because I'm tired. I mean, I'm really tired, and it's only my fault. Because, as I said yesterday, I knew that I was getting exhausted. I knew that I was getting too tired, and I knew that I had to make some direct and specific changes, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't tear myself away from the passionate experience of drawing in order to do the thing that I really needed to do, which was to go lay down and go to bed. And I wasn't able to do it until almost when the sun was up. By the time I was going to bed, my roommate, who goes to work extraordinarily early because he's got a weird schedule, I already heard him puttering around and getting up in the morning. And that was when I went to sleep. And then I slept till about 9:45. 9:45 a.m. A little bit later than that. Sort of blearily woke up and immediately pulled up my phone and was like, oh shit, I got like 0 minutes until the premiere starts, because I premiered a podcast episode yesterday, which is so exciting, and we'll see how it goes. I don't know, but But I started the first episode of a podcast that is, the name is sort of pending. I was calling it the Tea Talks Too Much podcast, but then immediately I got multiple recommendations from multiple people who were like, "Oh, you missed the opportunity to call this Tea Pod. It's like teapot, but Tea Pod. You should just call it Tea Pod." I was like, well, I'm not gonna not steal that amazing idea. That seems good because I'm Tea Talks Too Much, but it's the Tea Pod, and Tea Pod also seems like it's a bunch of pod people getting together and like peas in a pod and teas in a pod, and there's some layers to it that I like, that I enjoy, and so I've switched it to Tea Pod for now. It'll go up on Spotify and RSS feed stuff soon. I have to make another RSS feed for it, I think. And I think I can do that under my current plan on RSS.com. I don't know. I'm totally new to the RSS podcasting space, but I'm going to dive into it and we're going to get there. So that 2.5 hour podcast is going to go up as an audio only podcast that you can just listen to on your way to work or in your ears while you're doing something cool like cleaning up your desk, which you should be doing, by the way. And I put it up and I premiered it, and I talked to a bunch of people this morning as it was going, and I listened to the whole thing, and my guest who we did, it's not really my guest because I didn't frame it as it was my podcast because I didn't know that I was going to do it this way. But my guest psychologist Ed, who is doing anime reactions on Twitch from a psychological background, we talked about the psychology and philosophy of anime and of anime reactions and of what reaction videos are, because we're doing this weird thing in this space that seems really interesting and compelling, and it's tempting to ignore it and just be like, well, it's just, you just want to watch the funny boys go hee hee ha ha ho ho, or the girls with big titties go ooh cool anime, like whatever it is that you're seeking out in the anime space, it's just boring and stupid and useless. And it's like, no, that's not it. That's bullshit. In the same way that people are very dismissive of, I think, from my experience, from the people that I've met and talked to about this, people are often very dismissive of art and media and film and what they're doing when they're watching it. They view going and watching Netflix at night as like just wasting time. And I think that it is if you come at it from that perspective, but man, there's a reason that you're compelled by it, and there's a reason that you pay money for Netflix every month, and you feel empty if you don't have that media in your life, or you're constantly trying to seek out and live in novels and stories, or you're like my neighbor, the older lady that I talked about a little while ago on the Daily Brew, who is and has been for many decades obsessed and interested in romance novels and smutty ones too. Like what sort of fantasies are you pursuing, and what are you getting out of the media that you seek? And that's what he and I talked about. We come at it from very different directions and different backgrounds, because I've got film background and I'm thinking about systems design as well. I'm thinking about the system that we're a part of, and I'm thinking about building out my Discord to be an effective system for a lot of things, but partly I don't use feed-oriented social media with the broad exception of YouTube. So I'm off of Instagram now. I'm off of Twitter for the most part. My Twitter's automated. It just posts when I post something on YouTube, and I don't use Facebook. That's it. I don't use TikTok because it scares the hell out of me and it freaks me the fuck out. It's just too fast, and I guess I'm too slow. And that's an interesting thing about aging and not being a Zoomer, but maybe we'll have the technology to bridge that gap soon. But for now, TikTok is just too weird for me, and I understand that that's probably stupid, and I should probably get into the space. But I like YouTube a lot, and so I'm willing to chain myself to the YouTube ship a little bit. But YouTube does have an algorithmic recommendation system, and that can be dangerous. But I figured that the best way to build a recommendation system was to build a community instead of a feed, and not let the robots have access to my source of information. And so my source of information is the hundreds and hundreds of people who are in my Discord, who post things in all the different channels that are all, they're all generalized. There's a channel that's art, and there's a channel that's general anime, and it's like, well, but general anime is art. It's like, yeah, there's overlap, I know, but when something belongs in art, and when something belongs in memes, and when something belongs in vent, and when something belongs in general anime, and so just put it where it belongs, and then everybody who's looking for any of those things can go to those channels and talk about them. And anybody who finds something interesting about one of those things, like the Steven Zapata video, for example, there seems to be an urge or a compulsion in well-functioning social systems and in well-functioning individuals to go and take that information that you found and share it with people and go, wow, I found this interesting thing. And so if I can generate a community where that's happening a lot, I think that could be better for me and for all the members of that community to find interesting stuff that isn't just spat out by a computer system for them. I think that's a worthwhile pursuit, perhaps. Okay. It's hard to do hard things when it's hard to do them. I mean, extra hard to do them. One example is something that happened today. It's currently, I'm in Southern California, which is the hot, dry place, and it's currently cold and raining, and it's been freezing cold and raining for the last couple days. It's not actually that cold. It's just that 4 days ago it was like 80 degrees, and now it's like 55, and so the jump is immense. Celsius, hold on. I've switched all my weather apps to Celsius, but my brain still works in fucking Fahrenheit. So it's currently 15 Celsius. So that's 59 Fahrenheit. And it was 80 F2C. It was 26 Celsius. So a week ago it was about 26. And then this week it's 15, 16 as the highs. So you see what I mean? That's a pretty large jump. And so it feels way colder than it actually is. But it's cold and it's rainy and it's miserable and you don't want to go outside. And it's that kind of cold where just in the morning when you sit down on the toilet, you're like, oh, I have to touch it's cold. Ooh! You know, that feeling? Or worse, because we have a bidet. When the bidet splashes you with the cold water, because we don't have a heated bidet, it's like a $40 bidet. It's cheap. Chilly. But something that I've been doing for a while now, and forcing myself to do for a while now, and something that's hard to do, and that's why I do it, is because it's hard. When I turn on the shower, I turn it on as ice cold as I can get it, and I step into it, and I stand there for like at least 15 seconds. And if I'm being a real ass to myself, or I'm coming back from the gym or something, I'll take the whole shower as fast as I can in the cold water, just scrubbing and just like, it's freezing, just deal with it, just deal with it and do it. But sometimes I'm nicer to myself, and I want to spend, I've got hair, and I'm thinking about, I don't know what to do with it. I might have to cut it all off because it feels like a vanity thing to keep it. But sometimes I need to take more time in the shower, and it's just like, okay, I'm going to do 15 seconds of the ice cold shit, and then I'll go to warm, and I'll do the rest of my shower, and I'll maybe oscillate between the two, because that's really fun, is heat cold therapy. So I'll do like water off anytime that I'm soaping up, water on cold anytime that I'm like rinsing, and water on warm-ish anytime that I'm like getting wet down in order to get ready to do the scrubbing. Does that make sense? So like when I wet my hair, well, I guess I'll wet my hair with cold water, and that gets the whole self cold, and then I'll turn it off, and then I'll soap up, and I'll be freezing as I'm soaping up with no water on, because I'm evaporating and cooling even more. I'll be freezing, and then I'll turn on the water again cold and start off in cold. And it's not that bad to get into the cold there, but then I'll go to warm as I finish rinsing out, and then I'll scrub up and soap up and then cool down. I just mix it up relatively frequently, and be a little bit nicer to myself. But the point that I'm getting to is that when I'm back from the gym, or when it's like 90 degrees outside, when it's hot, and it's like sweaty and... Whoa, it's raining fucking sideways. Wow, fantastic. We're getting some serious rain. That does not happen in SoCal very frequently. It's raining. What you're hearing, if you're hearing that, is it's raining sideways against my window right there, and it's incredibly loud. And I'm looking out, and the gutters are flooding. So we're getting like some serious water, and that's really good, because it's I mean, we don't get enough water in Southern California at all. So this will be really rejuvenating for all of the plants, and for the hills that are forest fire prone, which is, another problem, because you got to let them actually burn. And we do way too much restriction of California forest fires. And so that's why sometimes when they do eventually burn, they burn really hot and really hard for a really long time over way too much space, is because in large part we've prevented them from happening naturally. So it's a process. It's an interesting one. But wow, what a great thing that we're getting so much rain. As I said, it's cold and rainy and shitty, and getting into an ice cold shower when you are already cold and rainy and shitty is the last thing that you want to do in the entire universe. It sucks balls. cold, stinky, wet balls. It's the worst, and it's the best. It's the best. Because all that cold and rainy and shitty is nothing compared to the ice cold of the water. And that ice cold of the water is nothing compared to your willpower and resilience as a human being. Because the moment you step into that ice cold shower, your perspective on what hurts and what feels bad and what's tough and what's difficult totally changes. And your body warms up immediately. Your metabolism kicks on, is like, burn more energy in order to provide heat to the rest of the systems. I've never found anything that wakes me up like that. As I said, I just got out. My hair is still a little bit wet, and I'm awake. And I was like drifting off to sleep about an hour ago. I was like, yeah. Partly because I was waiting for a roommate to get out of the bathroom so that I could go take that shower. And I went and I looked, and no dice. So I went and I sort of laid down, just dying, just distraught and tired. But I did it. And not only did I go and take a shower, which is an important thing and difficult on its own, and let's be honest, going and doing your hygiene and doing your basics, getting up out of bed, that shit's hard. And it gets harder when the world isn't in your favor. You know, when it's a bright sunny day and the sunlight is streaming into your face and the birds are chirping and, you know, your pets are up and like, no, come on, man, let us outside. And everything's sort of going in the right direction. And you've got something that you're looking forward to doing in the morning and you slept well and all those things. Man, it's really easy to get up and just be like, I'm going to have a fantastic day. Yay. But that's not the way that it goes most of the time. And so if you only pursue the difficult things, the things that are worthwhile, that you know are worthwhile, on the days where they seem easy, you're not going to go very far. At least that's what I think. And so, I took the cold shower on a cold day. And despite being tired, and maybe not 100% today, I'm up, and I'm as good as I can make myself, and I'm as put together as I can be. And so, I'm going to go watch Cyberpunk Edgerunners, because it's the thing that's on my mind the most. Today's Tuesday. It's supposed to be Oyasumi Punpun. Fuck. I'm sorry. I'm overloaded, and I'm trying to catch up in every stumbling way that I possibly can. The thing that I want to do today, because it has been weighing on my mind since I skipped it on Friday for various reasons, because I'm an idiot, and then continued to not get it done over the course of the weekend when I thought I would get it done, because I did D&D, and then I did the talk with Ed, and then I was editing the talk with Ed, and then I got exhausted because I overdid myself, and then I got more exhausted because I continued to overdo myself because I'm not actually that good at self-restraint when it comes to pursuing passion and stuff. All of that shit fucked me up, and the Cyberpunk Edgerunners is delayed thing is a little dragon egg, is what it is. It's a little dragon egg. And if I go and I grab that dragon egg and I nurture it myself, I can make it hatch into a dragon that I own and that I get to ride around on and all that jazz. And that's I did the Cyberpunk thing. And if I just leave it to hatch on its own, it's going to hatch. And the way that it will hatch is in sadness from the viewers who want to get that media, resentment from them because I haven't provided what I've promised to provide, guilt and shame on my end, which is a problem in its own. Like, I shouldn't feel that shameful about missing a reaction, but I do feel ashamed that I've essentially been unable to fulfill my promise, and I should feel some degree of that way, right? Not to a destructive degree, but to a self-correcting degree, where it's like, no, I can't let that happen too often, and I have to make changes in order to prevent it from happening more frequently, right? But regardless of all of the reasons, I want to watch Cyberpunk Edgerunners today, and regardless of whether I'm at 100%, I think it's more important that I do the thing than it is that I do the thing perfectly. And so, thank you for watching this Daily Brew. I appreciate your patronage and your support and your viewership and your love, and I reflect the love that I receive back to you. Or maybe I should say that I've been trying to put out some love into the world, and what I have experienced is an overwhelming flood of reflected love back at me. So thank you all for that. It's spectacular. And I'll say that I'm in the process of reaching out to a few other people in the reaction space in order to see if they would be willing to come onto my podcast and talk with me for a while about whatever, and see what they're up to and find out more about and pursue this thing that I found just a couple days ago with Ed from Psyculturists that like, wow, there's some value with talking to other people in this space. And I want to pursue that and see what they think that value is and where they're finding it and how they're doing what they're doing. And get a little bit of a community built here and get some of these people who are all competing with each other to not be competing and instead be collaborating and instead be at least talking about the process of doing what we're doing and getting better at it together. Because I think if we were all to figure out what better means in its broadest terms for all of us, we could all move toward whatever that is in our different ways more effectively if we're all talking about it. And that would be rad, because more high quality reactions, whatever that means, seems like a good thing in the world to me, because I think that the content that we're making is actually worthwhile. At least some of it. Some of it's just dumb as hell, and that's okay too, and there's value to that too. And so I want to talk to people on all sides of the spectrum. I'd love to talk to I've reached out to Film Buff. Some people have mentioned that I should try to reach out to 3 a.m. Panic, and I'm happy to do so. I want to reach out to Hita22 Reacts, Hita and Hustla, because they're rad in the space too. I'm already in contact with Caleb and Jacob from Semblance of Sanity, but I have to formally broach the subject with them. I'd love to talk to the Flaming Shark about his process, because he's one of the old school boyos who's been doing this, or old school potatoes, I should say, who's been doing this for a little while. There are all manner of and all number of people in this space that I find fascinating and I think are doing things in interesting ways. I'd love to see if any of them have ways to articulate what it is that they're doing, because I'll bet that while some of them seem like they're not sure what it is they're accomplishing, I'll bet that many of them have a well put together reason why they're doing exactly what they're doing in exactly the way that they are. And I'd love to investigate that and see if there are ideas that I could steal from them and ideas that they could steal from me. And beyond that, maybe we could steal each other's user bases and subscriber bases. And you know, I'm a small fish in the space in YouTube in general, but I'm not the smallest fish in the reactor space. And there are a lot of channels out there with no subscribers that might have really interesting ideas. And if I could get a couple of my subscribers to go to them and build us up and build that rising tide that raises all boats, then that seems like a worthwhile thing to be a part of. And I'd love to catalyze a piece of that change via, well, maybe that thing we talked about earlier, via effective, well thought out communication and speech. And I think we can do it together. So let me know what you think of this whole video and the weird ideas that I've been all over the place about. I recognize that I'm scattered, and that's sort of a practice run for the Cyberpunk that I'm going to watch momentarily. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow, I guess, for another Daily Brew. See you there. Peace. And I mean it.